Bitch is a Bad Word podcast is for informational purposes only and reflects the opinions of the host and guests. It contains explicit content and discusses sensitive topics such as domestic abuse, sexual assault, and violence, which may be distressing to some listeners. Please take care of your emotional well-being while listening. While we strive for accuracy, we make no warranties about the completeness or reliability of the information, and any reliance on it is at your own risk. We do not endorse third-party views and are not liable for any defamatory claims. Listeners should conduct their own research and consult professionals before making decisions. If you or someone you know is in danger, please call 911 or contact the National Domestic Abuse Hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 800-799-7233 or text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. We've got your back, besties. Caliber Studios has not independently verified the information you're about to hear. Welcome back to this episode of Bitch Sesh by Bitch is a Bad Word. Today we have your new bestie joining us, Lynn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, we're so excited that you're part of the bestie gang and a baddie bitch, as we like to say, the bitch squad. And we cannot wait to dive into your story today. So, like every story starts, there is a beginning, and we hope to God there's an end in sight where it does get better. So, if you wouldn't mind, just start us along your journey.
Sure. So my story actually begins, in my childhood. I grew up in the Northeast, and what I considered to be a pretty liberal area. And so I think a lot of things affected me culturally and religious-wise, and, even just the area that I grew up in, I feel like certain things happened when I was a child that I grew up in a home that was pretty toxic. And I think to the outside world, it seemed relatively normal. We lived in the suburbs. I went to a good school, nothing, I think like outwardly violent was happening. And my parents were respected in the community, but behind closed doors, there was a lot that we were dealing with as kids, and I was the youngest of four. So I think in a way I was shielded from some of it because I was too young to get a full grasp on what was really happening. But at the same time, my little brain couldn't really understand everything that was going on. But my father growing up was a compulsive gambler, and it really it's such an interesting thing to talk about because I think many people view compulsive gambling as not that big of a deal. Like they don't equate it with other addictions. I think they think it's kind of a minor thing, and they think of it as on a different level than maybe an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction. But really the effects of it are can affect a family on so many levels, because it's not just you're dealing with the person's addiction, but it also affects you financially, and it affects the children psychologically because there's a change in one of the parents' behavior. And my father was genuinely sick for many years. It was, I don't think I've really been able to come to terms with this for a long time, but in having conversations with my mother later in life, I realized that my father was abusive. He was emotionally abusive, and he was psychologically abusive. And sometimes those things can damage you even more than being hit. And there was also a lot of things, there was a lot of internal stress as a child. Like I always worried about money, which is something that a child should never really have to worry about, especially, when they're 6 or 7. But I was witnessing what was going on with my family, and at certain times there were tons of money, and sometimes we didn't have enough money for groceries. And given the area that I grew up in, the only thing that my brain could gather from all this was that I thought my father was in the mafia. because I think as a kid, that's all I really had as like a window of what to attach it to. Because, you know,
Sure.
there were certain times where my mother would like put on her fancy fur coat and they would like go out to, you know, front row at Barbara Streisand or something like that. And then there were other times where, you know, my dad just wouldn't come home and, you know, money was really tight and there were, you know, all these arguments and, you know, my older siblings, my older brothers especially, were like extremely angry and volatile, and I just started thinking, well, I think maybe we must be in an organized crime family because that's really all that I can think. It turns out we're not, um, but you know, once my
But no
father,
less like hectic. No less
right,
hectic. Gambling is crazy. And if you don't have the need or desire or addiction or even like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that you would like risk your entire family's like livelihood or ability to eat over freaking card game.
right.
And we know the house always wins. So, and the house it's losing is your home.
Right, right. And we almost lost our home. You know, my parents had a lot of financial problems that they had to pull themselves out of when we were kids. And they really, I don't think, fully, you know, kind of got back on their feet until maybe I was like a teenager in my 20s. So it was really
Oh,
rough
wow.
there for many years. And in that sense, I feel even worse for my older siblings because they really got the brunt of it. You know, like when they, you know, turned to my parents and said, I really want to go to college, and the money just wasn't there. And it should have been there. Um,
That's the part is that it's not, that's what doesn't compute. It couldn't compute to you guys. The money's there. It's not like you're underserved, you know, you can't make a living or, you know, whatever. It's like you can make a great living, but you're choosing this addiction.
Right. And my father was always one of those gamblers where I think you get this idea of gamblers on television where, and even in movies, where it's like the Wolf of Wall Street, like they're constantly cheating on their wives and there's drugs involved in this and that. My father was always a family man despite the gambling. So
Mm-hmm.
he was, and he was also an excellent worker because for many years, my father was the sole breadwinner. So if the money wasn't coming in, there would be nothing for him to fuel his addiction because my mother was a stay at home mom for many years. So my father never missed time at work. He was an excellent employee. He didn't drink, didn't do drugs. So from the outside world, it was even more hidden because there were no signs.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. And that's the like in his mind he's probably justifying like, oh, if I can go and win some money, I get to like bridge the gap of whatever my stay-at-home like wife isn't, you know, contributing or she's sorry. Let me freaking I cannot believe that just came out of my mouth. She's 100% contributing. She is doing the greatest work ever and the hardest job. But in their minds, they're like they've got to like fill the void and then they can that I think probably justifies their addiction even
Absolutely.
further. Like I'm
Absolutely.
doing this for the family. I'm not doing it for me.
Right, right. And no matter how low they get to a point, you know, it's almost my father used to say these things that like you could almost like pick out of like a GA pamphlet as like this is like the things that gamblers say, which is you know, so if you ever hear anyone that says these things, it is a sign that there is something wrong. No matter how low they get, they think I can always win it back. Oh, if I just win this next one, you know, I can recoup all the money that I've lost. You, like you said, the house always wins. You never really get ahead. The majority of the friends that my father had in his circle at that time in his life are either in prison or dead.
Are they in prison for like gambling shit or just they were just dirty dogs?
I mean, some of them
Oh,
were. Some of them did other things besides gambling, but most of them ended up in prison, you know, to fuel their gambling habits. They, you know, were partaking in
yeah.
other illegal things, you know, just various things so that they can fund the addiction.
And
But
chase the losses.
right, right. And so that's kind of where my life, you know, began. And I think my father not being there some of the time, um, you know, and just, you know, the era that I grew up in, you know, I was a kid in the 80s. And I think even then it was still very heavily ingrained that there was an expectation that I would get married and have children. And my parents wanted me to succeed in a career. They wanted me to eventually go to college, but I always felt like there was this expectation put on me from a young age that women were here just to serve men, in one way or another. We're here either to cook their dinner or to give them children or to take care of the home. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with people that choose that life for themselves. If you want to be a stay-at-home mother, more power to you. But I wish that someone had told me at a younger age that I didn't have to do any of those things, that none of that was expected of me.
Right. Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah. And that's not to say that I regret the life that I have now. I am happily married, and I have 2 kids that I love dearly. But I still have those moments where, like, I wish someone would have told me, you can have a different path, Lynn. Like, you don't have to be just this. But yeah, it's so I grew up in this kind of in this weird kind of toxic back and forth. My father did end up eventually going for help. So I don't think my father at this point has gambled in over maybe 35 years. So he's been clean for quite a long time. But
everyone was aware in the house, one way or the other, that there was. I mean, how do you even define gambling to children? It doesn't compute. Like, did some of you understand that there was gambling happening? Did others in the family of 4, just everybody must have had a different feeling, perspective of like what was happening? Or did anybody sit down? Did your mother ever say Dad has a gambling problem?
Eventually she did, because eventually she put her foot down, and this went on for years, because he started gambling when he was probably straight out of high school. They got married young and started having kids. And so, by the time he had stopped gambling, he was probably doing it for 15 years. So this had been going on for the majority of their relationship. And, but now there were other people involved. And so my mother actually put her foot down at some point and said, if you don't stop, this is going to be the downfall of the family. You are destroying everything that we said we would build. And at some point it did hit him. It took a while, but it did. And so he, started attending GA meetings, and, he actually started, this is interesting, several years after he had stopped gambling. I was in high school, and he actually showed up at my high school with a bunch of other reformed gamblers to talk about the dangers of gambling.
Oh, wow.
And like, I'm sitting there in the audience, and I'm like, oh, this is awkward. But at the same time, I was very proud, because it's something that not enough people talk about. So I was actually quite happy that he felt comfortable enough to share his story and to come warn kids that, it's not always just a card game. It's not always just a sports bet. It can really grow into something that is life altering and quite deadly.
Yeah, it really, I experienced that in my relationship, in our family. And it's insane. There's no other way to, it doesn't make sense. It's crazy. And the amount, and it depends on like how psychotic that the feeling is, or just even that coupled with somebody's personality type. Like if they have other traits that make them a pathological person, you put gambling in the mix and it is a house on fire.
And so the reason why I always start with that part of the story is because it actually hit me later on in life. So I went through a bunch of really abusive relationships. The first abusive relationship that I was in, I think I had just turned 18. And he was the same age as me. And I just thought the relationship was chaotic and passionate. At that young age, you're still so immature. You really don't know anything about what actual adult, respectful relationships are supposed to be like. And I think that many women will equate, a man's kind of unhinged behavior to, oh, he's just really passionate, or he really cares about me, or we always find ways to minimize it, like, oh, well, he's going through a lot of stress and trauma at home, and so I need to be sort of like the safe place. And I think looking at my parents' relationship, I always thought, well, if someone has a problem, you don't just abandon them, you stick with them through it. But that can become really toxic. And you can find yourself trauma bonded to someone. And so in that relationship, when I was 18, he and I got into, I wouldn't even call it an argument one day. I was trying to calmly tell him, because he was in the Marine Corps, and he was sitting at dinner with my parents one day, and he was throwing out a lot of curse words. And I mean, when I'm in conversation with people today, I still use a ton of curse words, not in my job, but, personal conversations.
Right.
And so when he and I were speaking, I could really care less. But this was a dinner in front of my parents and my family, and my grandfather was there. And I was like, so you could just, I kept asking him if he could just die down a little bit on the F-bombs, just respectfully for my family's sake. And he became so angry with me that he strangled me. He put one hand around my neck and the other hand kind of underneath my armpit and picked me up and threw me across the room.
In front of your family?
No. This was when we were alone.
Okay. Oh, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. I had taken him down to my bedroom, and I was kind of like trying to have a calm talk with him about, like, could you just maybe dial it down a bit, and watch the curse words. And he lost it. And that wasn't the only time that I had ever witnessed him, do violent things, but that was the first time he had ever turned the violence towards me.
Ugh. And the strangling is next level.
Yes.
That is just completely the most barbaric form of control and abuse.
Right. And when you look into the statistics about, strangulation, the damage can happen so quickly. You can, you can become incontinent within a few seconds. You can lose consciousness very quickly. You can have brain, you can have memory loss, you can have brain damage. So there's so many things that can happen. And when you have that history of strangulation in your relationship, it makes it, I think, 7 or 8 times more likely that someone will kill you.
Just from the jump, like this is what I'm talking to women who have been in this situation. You're out of your mind, and you're putting your hands on someone's neck and restricting their ability to breathe. You don't know what that pressure point is. It's not like, oh, if I just put this much pressure, they're just going to like feel it a little bit. You have no idea if you could just take it too far and kill them.
Right.
It's,
and so,
okay.
He and I eventually broke up, with him being in the military and me being, away at college and whatnot. It even besides all the abuse and the chaotic, the tumultuous relationship, there were other issues. And so eventually we broke up about after like 2.5 years, which was a good thing. It was far too intense of a relationship for how young we were. And so when I was 20, I started dating an older man, because I always felt like the 18-year-old was immature in so many ways. And I felt like, well, if I date a man who's older, surely he's going to be more mature, So I started dating a 27-year-old man. Not a huge age difference, but enough,
Yeah, at that age, 18 or... Yeah.
20 and 27 there's a lot that happens in that time.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
he had already had a career in the military. He had already, you know, begun his career outside the military. So he was sort of like established career wise. He had already been in a serious relationship, and been engaged, and that broke off, which probably should have been my first clue. And he was kind of rebounding off that relationship when he and I met. But I still said to myself, okay, you know, I want to give this a chance. And I think that was my first experience with love bombing. So, you know, the relationship went, you know, became intense extremely quickly, became sexual extremely quickly. You know, he always wanted me out on his arm. He wanted to introduce me to everyone, wanted to introduce me to his family. He wanted me enmeshed very quickly into his life. Um, so at first, I kind of just brushed off some of the red flags and thought, well, you know, maybe he's a little bit jealous. Maybe he's a little bit, you know, intense and controlling. And, but I do think that he really cares about me. However, a few months into the relationship, he actually used reproductive coercion to get me pregnant.
What does that look like?
So, I mean, I guess to give you like an official um, kind of definition of what reproductive coercion is, it's essentially a form of intimate partner violence that involves, you know, any kind of manipulative, controlling, or abusive tactics to influence a partner's reproductive decisions. And the tough part about reproductive coercion is back when this happened to me, and this was over 20 years ago, I don't even think that word existed. So
Mm-hmm.
even if I knew that what happened to me was wrong, but I still wouldn't have been able to put a name to what it was. And reproductive coercion in the terms of law, you know, trying to get some kind of like legal remedy for what's happened to you, it really depends on where you live. If you live in certain countries, they are starting to have coercive control laws and reproductive coercion,
Sure.
you know, coercive reproductive coercion laws. A lot of them, you'll if you ever hear the term stealthing, that's when two people are having sex and one person removes a condom without the other person's knowledge. But that's really so specific. That's only one part of reproductive coercion. You know, you can sabotage birth control, like, you know, not just taking off a condom, but tampering with it or hiding someone's birth control pills or, you know, forcing someone to become pregnant or, you know, forcing them to stay pregnant if they want to seek out an abortion, if they live in an
Mm-hmm.
area where they can. Um, you know, withholding financial support for pregnancy related expenses or birth control or an abortion, threatening to leave the relationship, and, you know, things like that. Lying about your reproductive status, you know, so telling a woman that you can't have kids and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or that you had a vasectomy years ago and that you know, there's no need to use condoms. You know, that
Right.
is
Ugh,
reproductive
gross.
coercion right there. It is. It's so insidious. Um, and like I was saying, you know, it to try to get legal justice for it is so complicated because, um, you know, I think there are actually only 3 or 4 states right now that have laws specifically that outline stealthing. But if you wanted to try to get a remedy, if you think that you've experienced reproductive coercion, um, you'd have to either look at each state's coercive control laws or you'd have to look at sexual assault laws. And you'd have to kind of hope that, you know, perhaps a DA or, you know, a county prosecutor in that state would be would think that would think that, you know, filing charges would be worth it in your case.
Right.
Um, and even those
So how did
laws.
you like with you when this happened? What was the what was the situation? Like you're
So
together and how is he doing this?
so the way it happened for me was I was on birth control starting at 18, And I went to my annual checkup, and my gynecologist said to me, "Oh, I see you're on birth control. They actually came out with this new product, and it's you're a young woman on the go. I'm sure it's a pain in the butt to remember to take the pill every time, every single day at the same time. And so now we have a patch, a birth control patch you can just stick on like your lower back or something, and it stays on in the shower, and you have to change it once a week. And would you like to try it?" And I said, "Sure, sounds great." So I put on the patch and I head off onto vacation, and I go into the water, and the patch immediately comes off.
Ah,
So now I am entirely not protected. So he and I had already been dating a few months at this point. So I come back from the vacation and I say to him, "We have to be extremely careful." Like, and birth control was our only form of, like protection at that point. And so I said to him, "What do we want to do? Do we want to use a condom? Do we want to hold off until I can get back on the pill and I've had a cycle? What are we going to do?" And so, we decided that we were going to go ahead and have sex. And he said that he was going to pull out. Now, some people would say, well, that's not the most responsible or, guaranteed way. It's absolutely not. We were taking a chance, but we,
you had an agreement.
yeah, we had,
Like, you had an agreement. Whatever.
we had
like
an agreement.
Yeah.
So later
Exactly.
that night, we were together, and I'm reminding him, like, during the sex, "Don't forget, you need to pull out. Don't forget, don't forget." This is like a 20-year-old girl reminding a 27-year-old man, "Don't forget."
And like, how are you? That talk about like a buzzkill.
Exactly. And he's getting irritated with me. He's like rolling his eyes, and he's like, I know, I remember, I remember. Like, like I'm irritating him. And the time comes, and he does not pull out. And I was devastated. I was in shock at first. And I said, "What the hell did you just do?" And his response was like completely lacking in any emotion. It was so flippant. He was just like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot."
I can't control my cock.
Right,
Sorry.
right. Oops. And I was so, I just went into, I froze really. I just sort of froze
Yeah.
and went into immediate panic. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? The time that this happened was the super early 2000s. And at this point, I'm pretty sure that Plan B was around, but it wasn't available over the counter.
Okay.
Because I don't
Right.
think that
So, I
happened.
mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so I don't even know if I really knew that something like that was available, but even if I had found out it was available, I still would have had to go to my gynecologist, which was the same gynecologist that my mother went to, sit
Oh,
down and
gosh.
ask this woman and basically admit that all this had happened. I was too humiliated and scared. I
Yeah. No,
didn't
and you
want.
don't like who. Most people aren't thinking of something like Plan B. You made a
Right.
plan. Your Plan A was he was pulling out. That was the
Right.
plan. You didn't need a Plan B because that you had an agreement,
Right.
and you gave him consent, and he agreed, and that's it. End of story.
Right.
That's what he should have done. So it is not on you that you didn't know or look. But no.
Yeah. And so this is a big part of what I had to deal with many years later was I for so many years I put so much of the responsibility and guilt on myself, and I brushed it off for so long as, well, he just made a mistake, and it was an innocent mistake. But once a couple weeks went by, I didn't get my period. I took a pregnancy test and found out that I was pregnant. His response again was like completely not unemotional. It was just like he was waiting for me to pop up with the positive pregnancy test, and he said, "Oh, sounds good. Let's get married." Like, no actual proposal, no like, "Hey, I'm so sorry," no accountability on his end, just, "Hey, cool, sign your life over to me forever."
Right. Let's
You
get her
know?
done.
And
Wow.
I thank God I had at least enough wherewithal at that age to say, "You and I have not been together for that long. You don't know me well enough to know that you want to spend the rest of your life with me and have a child with me. Also, in no way am I ready for that. I am in the middle of college. I don't have my degree yet. There are things that I have wanted to accomplish that I haven't yet, and we're not ready. I'm not ready in any way to be the type of mother that I want to be. And his response was immediate anger. What kind of woman are you, and what's the big deal, and I'll take care of you, and why are you being so over emotional, and you're overreacting, and all of those things that men love to say to women when we are legitimately upset and have legitimate reason to be fucking concerned. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thank you. I was waiting. It's like been 28 minutes and you haven't dropped a freaking curse word.
So, sometimes I have to shut it off.
Have you listened to the show?
Sometimes I have to shut it off when I do certain podcasts, because they're kind of like, no, this is like clean. So I have to really like fight my Jersey self and be like,
no, mm-hmm. I was like waiting. Yeah. Like,
but that's so funny. And so I told him that I wanted to terminate the pregnancy, and he fought me on it. And so eventually I just said, this is what I'm going to do, and I really wish that I could have your support. And so I went to a Planned Parenthood, and they eventually hooked me up with an abortion clinic. And the abortion clinic at the time, they would only accept cash. So this is several $100s. And, I'm a 20-year-old bartender, which is the only reason I even had cash on me. Like what 20-year-old randomly, has like $400 on them. But and also it was done under general anesthesia at that time.
Oh, wow.
So it was required that you have someone drive you there and stay for the procedure and be there to drive you home. So naturally, the person I thought would be there was the person that got me into this predicament in the first place. He refused.
Duh.
He refused to pay for it. He refused to pay for the procedure, and he refused to drive me there. He didn't want to be involved at all.
Okay.
So I paid for it, and I had a friend take me. I didn't expect to see protesters there. There weren't a lot, but there were 2 women outside who were screaming at girls, and a lot of them were younger than I was. I mean, I was 20 at the time. I think I had just turned 21 when I found out I was pregnant. Many of these girls were teenagers, and these 2 older women are like getting in their faces with these posters and screaming at them that it's not too late, and it was pretty appalling. But I went through with it. The people at the clinic were incredibly kind and supportive. And it was quick, and I don't remember it, which is a good thing. I just remember waking up and coming home and being in a lot of pain. And that was about it. But, and I remember feeling extremely relieved. Like, this was the right thing. It wasn't an easy decision to make, but I absolutely 100% made the right decision. Even though I struggled emotionally with it for a while, I think really not what I was struggling with emotionally wasn't so much the decision that I had made. It was the treatment that I was receiving by this man, because I didn't do what he wanted me to do, because he didn't get his end result that he tried to coerce me into.
Yeah, which is lock you down.
Right. And so at that point in our relationship, the abuse really kicked up. He was already kind of controlling and jealous before that. Now it was like straight out psychological, verbal, and emotional abuse. It was insults and calling me a whore, and constantly making comments in front of his friends, and demeaning insults, and just nonstop things like that, constantly accusing me of cheating. If I even had a conversation with another man, even if it was like, at a gas station, like me paying for my gas or something like that, I was constantly getting accused of, you're a whore, that man was staring at you, you're cheating, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it was...
Did he use the abortion against you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And even if he, sometimes he wouldn't always say that, but I knew that that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
The relationship went on. It really shouldn't have, but the relationship went on for several years after that. I want to say we were together for maybe close to 5 years. And later on in the relationship, um, we were having this conversation one day. We were like watching a movie about a couple that had divorced with a young child. And I looked over at him and I said, if we ever, get married and have a kid and divorce, I would always want to keep things on the up and up for the child. Like I'd always want to try to be the best co parents that we can be. And his response was, I would just take the children away from you because they're my kids. And that's when it really, really hit me that
Ugh.
this man is a monster.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, for sure.
this is a controlling.
He's
Not
telegraphing. He's telling you exactly what he was going to do.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
he's not even kidding. He's like, just, I told you.
Right. Right. It's that sort of I a lot of people don't appreciate when you throw around the term, like narcissist, but it's like that narcissistic, that dark type of behavior that's like almost sociopathic in a sense, where like,
Right.
The other person is.
Yeah.
But that at that point, I think I really knew that it was like a breaking point. I knew I needed to get away. So I got away not long after that. But during the relationship, I had broken up with him so many times I can't even count. Like we had like the most ridiculous relationship where like he would push me to a brink. I would break up with him. I would say, I can't do this anymore. And then I would finally tell him to go away. I would tell him to go, to please not contact me. And at one point, I actually was free of him for about 3 months. And I thought like I was finally starting to break the trauma bond. I was like, okay, I can finally start moving forward in my life. Like I'm still a young person. I have all of this life to lead. And one night when I was sleeping, and this was later on, I wasn't living with my parents, he broke into my house.
Okay.
He I was renting a house at the time, and I lived in the top 2 floors, and there was another family living on the first floor. And so he broke into my part of the duplex, came upstairs, walked into my bedroom. And I had a scary dog at the time. I mean, she wasn't scary to me. She was an angel, but she was a pit bull, and she looked so fierce, and was very protective of me. But the only problem was the dog knew who he was. So the dog didn't alert me. So everyone just kind of like casually walked into my room, and he just sat down on the bed next to me. And I'm trying to like, get my bearings. And I'm like, what's going on? Why are you here? Is the dog okay? Where is everybody? Blah, blah, blah. And he's just going, oh, it's okay. Everything's fine. I didn't hurt the dog. I just really wanted to see you. And I said, how did you get in? And he said, oh, you left the door unlocked. Bullshit. Bullshit. I was raised in a house where you don't ever leave the door unlocked. Even to this day, my husband will tease me because I lock the doors probably an unnecessary amount during the day, because I don't live in New Jersey anymore. I live in Central Texas. I live in the suburbs. It's pretty quiet, and constantly like my husband will walk outside, in the backyard to go like water a tree. And I'm like, like locking. And he's like, you locked me the fuck out again, Lynn. Like what?
Right.
Damn it. Like, when are you like, and it's become a running joke, but I'm not the type of person that leaves doors unlocked, especially when I'm living alone.
No, I didn't. Yeah, of course you didn't.
So
we already know. Yeah.
Yeah. So he broke in. And so when I woke up the next morning, he was gone. And I'm looking all over for him, and I'm like, the hell did he go? And I look on my dining room table, and there's a handwritten note. And it basically it says a lot of creepy things. But the most creepy thing that it says is, I'm sorry that I scared you. I just wanted to watch you sleep. Yeah. And I was like, oh. So yeah. God. But even then, I still got back together with him when he came and begged for my forgiveness and got down on his knees and cried.
All the
I let it slide.
Theatrics.
Yes. And people to this day, when I tell this story, are like, you had a piece of paper in your hand that proved that he was in your house. You should have immediately gone to the police and immediately gotten a protective order. None of it. I did have a friend that I called at the time because I was so freaked out. And I said, should I go get a protective order or a restraining order? Should I go to the police? Because I'm really frightened. And thankfully, I'm not friends with that person anymore. But what she said to me at the time was, well, if you do go to the police, just think about it. You're going to ruin the rest of his life. And she actually thought that the letter that he wrote was sweet.
Okay.
Yeah. So not only was I surrounded by, an abusive boyfriend and his abusive family, but I was also surrounded by these enablers, like this family
Right.
of, this like circle of flying monkeys that I couldn't even get like a reasonable view of normalcy because everyone I was
Mm-hmm.
going to for abuse kept telling me, well, it's not that bad. He doesn't hit you. Well, he buys you nice
Right.
gifts. Will he this, will he that? And just constantly would minimize his behavior or make excuses for it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, those people are just as complicit.
Yeah, absolutely. I eventually
So you
did.
get back together with him, and
Yes. So we stayed together for a little while after that. He ended up getting a new job and he actually asked me to move with him out of state. And so this was an even scarier situation on my part because I thought, wow, this is one step closer to us getting married. He wants me to move with him to a brand new place where he can take care of me, and we can finally get into, the part of the relationship where we, get closer to getting married and maybe we think about having a child and whatnot. But really what he wanted was to isolate me.
of course, he wanted to put you in that freaking well, with the
Yeah.
dog.
And he couldn't have taken me to like a more remote place. Like I went from living like in the
Oh,
middle
you
of
went with him.
I did.
Oh, Jesus, Lynn.
Yeah, I know. I know. I know it's so hard to explain to even when I hear myself talk about it now, I'm like, "Oh my gosh." But when
No,
you're
I've
in
been there. I
it,
get it. I
when you're
promise
in
you.
it, it's
It doesn't
so
seem
hard.
weird.
Right. And you're so attached to this person because of all the time you've spent. And it's not like I never tried to date other people. I did, but the people that I would end up in these short relationships with were so much were also, unhealthy and toxic. And so at
Yeah,
the end of the day, I would almost think, well, the devil that I know is better than the devil I don't.
exactly. Yep.
At least I know what he's capable of. All these other men out there could be capable of so much worse. So I should just stay
Yeah,
with him.
you feel like you have him on lock and you understand and you know how to walk on the eggshells around him and sort him out. Yeah.
Right, right. And there's always that hope that they'll change. Like, well, maybe once we're married, he'll change, or maybe once we have a
Yeah.
child, he'll change, or maybe this once he's older, or once I'm older, things will be different. But I left my good job as a paralegal, and I left my family, and I left all of my friends in New Jersey to go to like butt fuck Pennsylvania
Mm.
in the middle of like the farm, like the middle of farmlands. I didn't know a soul.
Ugh,
Um,
geez.
and so eventually we did break up and it was this kind of like violent confrontation. And I basically just, I still had that dog, that trusty, awesome pit bull. She was the first thing that I put in the car because I was like, there's no fucking way I'm leaving this dog behind. So I put her in the
Right.
car. I put as many things as I could into my car. And I called up my parents and I said, I have to get out of here. And I drove 6 hours away to where they lived. And I pretty much never looked back.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
That's
But
like
it took like 5 years. And that's,
yeah, that's what's crazy. It's like it took 5 years. You thought you could change him. You're like the move, the this. I mean, he set you up. You're so like, thank God that you
yeah.
had that just one moment of this is it because you know it was going to escalate. You know what you've heard the stories. What happens next? And he was going to just get worse, and you know you were going to have less of a voice, and he was going to take all the control. Ugh,
Yeah.
I'm so happy you
Um,
got out
I
and got
am too.
left.
I am too. So I went to go live in another state with my parents, and I was actually single, like legitimately single, for like the first time in my life. But I was like 25, on the verge of 26. So like it was so weird because I was like dating for the first time when everyone else was like had been dating for years, but instead I was like stuck in misery. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stay single. I'm going to this, I'm going to that. And eventually, I want to say a couple years later, I met another older man. So I was probably 26, like heading towards 27, and he was also 7 years older. So he was 33, I think, when we started dating. And it seemed like good on paper guy, comes from a, good family, has a good job. He met my parents. He was respectful. He wanted his parents to meet my parents. And so, everything seemed like it was kind of falling into place, but not very soon into that relationship. I mean, like, not very long into that relationship, I started seeing red flags. Extremely controlling, extremely jealous, like even to a different level of the first guy. So this man was quite a large built man. Like he was sort of built like very wide, like a football player. So really strong, had always been into bodybuilding. And it was one of the things at first that I thought was attractive about him. But he was a bully in every single way, shape, and form. So he was not only extremely jealous of not just people that I even spoke to, because it's not even like I was out there speaking to really many other men at the time, but he would actually stand over my shoulder while I was online. And like if I was checking my Facebook account or something, and he would look at my list of friends and he would pick out all the male faces and he would make me go through them and say, how do you know that guy? How do you know that guy?
Oh God.
And it was Facebook. I mean, like, I'm not even on Facebook anymore, but like at the time, most of it was like men that I had graduated high school with that I hadn't spoken to since graduation.
Yeah, no. Facebook is like everybody you've ever went to elementary school with is your friend, and you're like, I don't know who they are, but
Exactly. Like I had no idea what those people were even doing. I lived states away from where I even grew up. I had zero contact. It was basically just like, you get a friend request from someone that's like, hey, I had sociology with you one year. And you're like, cool, let's be Facebook friends. Like it was that, time of the 2000s where you were like, cool, Facebook,
yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
And so he would do that. He would also take my phone and go through my contacts, and he would pick out every name that seemed male, and he would interrogate me about who they were. Just to the point of ridiculousness. Like he would pick up a name, he would pull up a name that had the same last name as mine, and he would go, who's this? I've never heard you talk about this person. I'm like, that's my fucking cousin. Why do you think we have the same last name? Idiot. Like, what? Like just insane. And so that became so much worse. It escalated to a level where he was controlling, who I spent time with, and didn't want me going out with my friends. And if I did go out with my friends, he would find out where we were and show up there so that he could like monitor who I was talking to, so that he could monitor my behavior. And he was physically abusive, but he was very sneaky about it. Like instead of just straight up slapping me or hitting me, he would like pretend like we were messing around, and then he would shove me into something. And when I would, turn around and say like, oh my gosh, that really hurt, why did you do that? He'd be like, oh, you're not a tiny little girl, like you can take it. Like just, stop being a baby.
Right.
When he had just like shoved me into a pool table.
Right.
And this is like a man who was like weighed like 275. Like this is a big dude. And it just escalated and escalated. And I tried to break up with him at some point, and I don't think that I felt comfortable enough voicing the concerns that I had to people. And so I just kept telling people, I just don't see this going anywhere. There's no spark. But I knew that I wanted to get away from him. And everyone around me kept telling me, oh, he likes you so much. You should really just give him another chance. He comes from a good family. But about, how long was it into the relationship? Maybe about a year into the relationship. I was over at his house one day, and we were having sex, and the sex started consensually. And at one point, I whispered into his ear. I was trying to say sexy things. I wouldn't even call it dirty talk. It was like the mildest of mild. And I basically just was whispering in his ear and asking him if he liked what I was doing, like if I was giving him pleasure, essentially. And something set him off about that. And he got really mad. And I was facing him at the time. We were kissing when I said this to him. And he turned me around and shoved me face down into the bed. And held me there, kind of like with one hand on my upper back, and took my other hand and twisted it around the back of me, kind of like you would with someone who was under arrest.
That's what I was envisioning, yeah.
And then raped me. And it went from consensual sex to rape within a second. And I froze. I couldn't even believe that it was actually happening. So I went somewhere else and until it was over. And when it was over, I think that's when the danger hit me. Because we were inside of a house, even if I had screamed during it, thinking back,
yeah.
I don't think it would have done any good. But I think when he was finished and I was able to get my clothes back on and he was laying on the bed and I thought, okay, this is a good time for me to run. That's when I ran, because I was like, now's my chance, go. And he actually tried to grab me by the leg or something as I was running past him out of the room to stop me from leaving. But I veered around him, ran down the stairs, got in my car, and drove home as fast as I could and locked the door behind me. And it's almost like as soon as I had locked the door, I would say not within a minute or two, he was right there at my door. So he had jumped in the car and followed me my entire way home.
Well, Lynn, that's why you like locking the door so much. Damn. I mean,
right.
I would lock the door too.
Right. Yeah, and so he kept, yelling from outside my door, please let me in. I just want to talk to you. And I was like, I don't want to see you, go away. And eventually he said, please let me in. I want to explain. And something in me said, okay, just let him explain and tell him that he's a piece of shit and that you don't ever want to see him again. And then just let that be the end of it. Finally, this is the closure. You can finally be clear with him that you don't ever want to see him again. And so I let him in and we sat down on my couch. And at some point in the conversation, I looked at him and I said, you just raped me. And he said, it wasn't rape. You wanted it. Wow. And, yeah, I think something hit me in that moment where I felt like if I was to go to the police about this, there is a good chance that they are going to take it as a he said, she said, especially since we were already in a sexual situation that started consensually. I had already had my clothes off. It's, I think the idea...
But consent can change at any time.
Oh,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Me saying that is not to
I
discourage
get where you're coming
anyone.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from. You're like, why? It doesn't make sense in the moment. You're like, well, we were doing it and then it changed. It's hard to explain to anybody. Of course.
And I think the idea that I had, the way that it is represented, I think still to this day in movies and is you get two examples of what rape might be like. And one is, a woman walking alone in a dark alley and a stranger comes behind her, with a gun or a knife and she's raped, in this alleyway by a total stranger. Or you get more of the college frat, drinking kind of date rapey story. Both of those are equally terrifying and they absolutely both count as sexual assaults and or rape. But if that's all you have to go by, it's so important to me that we start changing this narrative that, like you said, things can start off consensually. You can find yourself in a room with someone that you thought you wanted to be with, you thought you wanted to be alone with. And if at any point you say no or stop or wait, that's it. That's the end of the consent right there.
Yeah.
And so that's why I do share this story so often.
So you're in the house, and then he's like, no, you wanted it, and then
And then, I think eventually we did break up. Sadly, that wasn't the breakup then and there. But I felt like at that point in my life, I was financially in a terrible spot. And so he sort of, used finances to, control me. He used jealousy to control me. He used, the pressure of being alone to control me. It was so many things. And again, it was, he did what a previous partner did, which was he sort of like kept hanging the carrot in front of my face, which was like, uh, one day we're going to get married, or I just want to get you a nice ring, or something like that. And
Sure.
so with that kind of promise of like a future, I think it kept me hanging on to, oh, maybe things will improve. Maybe things are going to get better. But they didn't, and I did eventually leave him. And sadly, I ended up in an abusive marriage after that, because every time I got into this terrible cycle in my life where I kept getting with these terrible people, feeling trapped. I would eventually hit my end point. I would run, and then I would end up running into the arms of another abuser.
which happens all too often, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which is no fault of yours or anyone's. It's just that it's chaos. Feels familiar, and those people, when you're not healed and you haven't, all going back to all the way to your childhood, they feel like home.
Right.
And until you've recognized that and done whatever work that needs to be done to say like home is where hell is, if that's the case, then it's easy to happen. It's easy.
Right. And
so you're in an abusive marriage next.
Right. So
for how long?
I was, let me think. We started dating when I was about 29. We got married when I was 30. And, this was another situation where I, experienced all the love bombing, and to, like the exponential degree. It was, we would sit on the phone for hours, and he would ask all of these deep, deep questions about my life, my past, all of these things. And then he would just mirror whatever I said to him.
Sure.
And it almost seemed like, oh, wow, I've really found my person. He would always, he started throwing out I love yous incredibly quickly, and started throwing out the term soulmate. I hope I don't upset anyone by saying this. I know people have really strong feelings that they like have met their soulmate in life. I personally don't believe that is a thing. That's not to say that I don't.
No, there's not 8 billion people in the world, besties. There's not one person for you. Because if that one person's beating you up, that's not your soulmate.
Exactly.
So
like
no.
That's if you're, saying to people that they found their soulmate, and then finding out that, maybe, your soulmate, quote unquote, is, a gambler or an abuser or a child molester or a criminal or a murderer, something like that, is, basically giving this idea to people that, well, whoops, you had that one chance and now you've lost it. Like, it's like setting them up for such failure, and such disappointment in their life. And that's not to say I love my husband. He is like my biggest fan. He is so supportive. He is the relationship that I should have had when I was younger. But if someone was like, oh, is your husband your soulmate? I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is. That doesn't mean my husband is my partner. My husband is, at the end of the day, like my best friend. And we work together, because people don't understand that marriage is work.
Yeah.
People think that if this person is your soulmate, it shouldn't be work. Like, you should just wake up every day, like smiling, and like looking into each other's eyes, and like, that's going to solve all your problems. It is work. My husband and I, we work at our relationship. we're both in counseling, not necessarily to deal with each other, but to deal with all the trauma that we experienced as kids and in our earlier adult lives, so that we don't take our traumatic past out on each other, so that we don't get into this terrible cycle of this like generational trauma that people carry around with them. That a lot of people took on from their parents, and their parents took it on from their parents. And, I think that so many people dismiss it and just say, well, my parents were doing their best with what they were given. And then they sort of accept this terrible, terrible dysfunctional behavior. And they don't realize that at some point in their lives, it's going to affect them, and it's going to affect the way that they treat their kids. And if you don't put a stop to it, you're just continuing along with this like cycle of abuse and maltreatment. It's never going to get better. And so my husband and I are so cognizant to make sure that we like put a stop to this any generational trauma that can come to our kids. And we're not perfect by any means, but the one thing that we always say to our kids is like, if we feel like we've made a mistake or this or that, is like we hold ourselves accountable and we apologize.
That's awesome.
I don't think enough people out there are genuinely apologizing to their kids when they make a mistake.
No, they're not. And yeah, good for you. Like all this, going through this, everything you've gone through, you have broken a generational curse, and you've made an amazing impact that you're not even aware of yet, for your children. So that makes you an absolute baddie for taking everything you've been through and then being able to unpack it and be better for the world and for yourself and for your kids. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
I love that.
I appreciate
I
that.
really appreciate you like sharing all of these details, and then the hope at the end of it, like that. Well, I'm sort of anti-hope. That word drives me nuts, because it's like, if you're in deep, it's like, okay, well, I hope that I don't get beaten up today. I want you to be like real, raw, realistic of like, there is the future, the work that's going to take to get you into a better place. So I appreciate that, you can take us on this journey, and there is a way for it to turn around, and you can find the peace and the love and the safe person that everyone deserves to be with. So that's amazing. I love that, your whole journey. That's
Thank
so
you.
great.
Thank you.
Well, so do you share your, where can our besties, can they reach out to you? How do you want, our bestie gang to holler back?
So, well, I'm actually part of the National Domestic Violence Hotline Storyteller Collective. So, if anyone ever, wanted to contact me about, hearing my story or interviewing me for an article or anything like that, or public speaking, I am always open to that. And I've done that quite a bit in the last year. So that's always one way that people can contact me is through the Storytellers Collective. But they can also contact me individually. I am on Instagram and I am on LinkedIn. I try not to stay too active on other parts of social media, just to kind of protect myself. But I will share, all of my information with you, and maybe you can put the links, in the podcast.
Yeah, we will.
Transcript for anyone
Shout
who
out
wants
to
to
the
reach out to me.
hotline.
Yeah, and there, I'm actually just found this out a few days ago that I'm actually going to be serving on an advisory council for the southern region of the National Domestic Hotline, and I'm incredibly excited about that.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. We love the hotline. I talk about them like every show. I'm like, do it, call it, text
Yes.
START. Let's go. Let's get you out. So amazing. Lynn, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. And you're amazing. You're the resilience and just your ability to tell your story to help others. I admire so much. So thank you for coming on this episode of Bitch Sesh.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everything you're doing to encourage, survivors to share their stories. And it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Every time I have a bitch sesh, I'm like, oh my God, another one. There's like, I cannot believe it. I mean, I can, but I can't. And it's like, I want to just bring the power to voiceless. And thank you for coming on and being part of our journey.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
So we love you. Welcome to the Bestie Gang. And we'll have you on it. We'll do more things, like some things that we could do with the hotline too, as well, which would be so great. So thank you, Lynn. We love you. You're a baddie. Bitches being bad.